Let me ask you something. Have you ever found yourself anxiously waiting for his text, rearranging your life around his schedule, wondering where you stand, while he barely lifts a finger to keep your attention? That's not love. That's being an option. And here's the truth: you will never become his obsession by being endlessly available, overly accommodating, or afraid to walk away. Being someone's obsession, the person he can't stop thinking about, the one he feels lucky to have, isn't about playing games. It's about playing yourself better. It's about stepping into your power, owning your value, and knowing that the right guy will rise to meet your standards, not the other way around. When we talk about relationships, especially in the early stages, there's one crucial concept that tends to get overlooked: your standard. Most people are so focused on being liked that they forget to ask, do I even like them? Are they showing up in a way that meets my values, my energy, my vision for what I want? The mistake many people make is thinking that love is earned by proving how available, patient, or giving you are. You think, if I just show him I care, if I just make things easier for him, if I just hang in there, he'll eventually choose me. But here's the brutal truth: people don't fall in love with you because you're convenient. They fall in love with you because they recognize your value, and value is never proven through self-abandonment. When you're too eager to please, too afraid to rock the boat, or constantly making exceptions for someone who's not fully investing in you, what you're actually doing is sending a subtle message. I don't believe I'm enough unless I work for your love. And when someone senses that, even subconsciously, it diminishes their respect for you, that's when you become an option. When your time, your energy, your emotional presence are given freely without that person having to step up, without them having to earn it. Now, let's be clear. We're not talking about playing hard to get. That's manipulation. What we're talking about is a mindset shift from proving yourself to protecting your value. You protect your value by having standards. You protect your value by not being afraid to say, that doesn't work for me. You protect it by knowing that you don't need to twist yourself into a version of who you think he wants, because the right person will never require you to compromise the core of who you are just to keep their attention. Think about it like this. If you walked into a store and saw two identical watches, one behind the glass for 10,000 and another sitting in a bargain bin for 10, what would you assume? Same product, totally different pricing. You'd probably assume the one behind the glass must be more valuable. Same thing happens in relationships. If you carry yourself like you're priceless, people treat you that way. If you carry yourself like you're desperate for attention or afraid to lose someone, they treat you like you're replaceable. What raising your standard means is refusing to be in emotional limbo. It means no longer settling for one-word texts, last-minute plans, vague intentions, or half-hearted effort. It's not about being cold or arrogant. It's about being clear. I'm not here to audition. I'm here to connect with someone who shows up like I do. You don't get to be his obsession by doing more for him. You get there by requiring more from him. And that doesn't mean issuing ultimatums or putting pressure on him. It means quietly adjusting what you tolerate. You stop chasing, you stop excusing, you stop waiting. You simply let your behavior align with your worth. And that shift alone is magnetic, because the moment you stop accepting crumbs is the moment someone either steps up to offer the whole damn cake, or you free yourself up to find someone who will. And that's the point. You don't need to yell, you don't need to beg. You just need to live in alignment with what you know you deserve. The rest will take care of itself. Let's be honest, at some point, we've all been told that the secret to attracting someone is to be available, to respond quickly, to be easygoing, to say yes to plans, to show up when they need you. And sure, there's kindness in being reliable. But here's what no one tells you. If you're always available, you start to lose your impact. You become a background presence, nice, convenient, but not unforgettable. Being unforgettable isn't about being distant or mysterious on purpose. It's about having a life that's so rich, so full, and so self-sufficient that someone feels lucky just to get a piece of it. That doesn't happen when you're constantly rearranging your schedule to fit someone else's. It happens when you're already living in such alignment with your own purpose, passion, and joy that being with you is a privilege, not a given. When someone feels like you're always just a text away, always ready to drop everything, it breeds familiarity. And while that might seem comforting at first, it can easily slide into predictability. Predictability doesn't spark obsession. What does? Intrigue, curiosity, a feeling that, wow, there's so much more to this person I haven't uncovered yet. But that kind of intrigue only comes from you actually having something going on in your life outside of the relationship. The truth is, obsession doesn't grow in proximity, it grows in space. The moments when you're not texting back immediately, when you're doing your thing, when they don't quite know what you're up to, that's when they start wondering. Not because you're playing a game, but because you're genuinely busy living a meaningful life. You become unforgettable when you stop being someone who's waiting and start being someone who's building your goals, your passions, your friendships. When your energy isn't wrapped up in what he's thinking, but in what you're creating, you exude something rare, self-worth. And self-worth is sexy. It makes people take notice. It makes them lean in. It makes them realize you're not here hoping to be chosen. You're here choosing yourself. And if they want a spot in your world, they have to bring something real to the table. This is where a lot of people get stuck. They confuse being hard to get with being emotionally distant. But that's not what this is about. Being unforgettable doesn't mean you're cold or unavailable or closed off. It means that when you are present, you bring warmth, joy, and real connection. But you're not always present because you have things to do, people to see, goals to chase. So the next time you feel that urge to respond instantly, to clear your schedule, to bend over backward for someone who hasn't even earned your time yet, pause. Ask yourself, am I making myself too easy to reach, too quick to please, too accessible to be missed? You don't have to be mean to create space. You just have to stop putting your life on pause for someone else's convenience. Because here's what happens when you don't. You create emotional contrast. When you're around, they feel your presence deeply. And when you're not, they feel your absence. Not because you're playing games, but because your presence actually means something. In the end, the most unforgettable people are the ones who live fully, who don't make someone else their whole world, who keep showing up for themselves day after day. That's what makes you intriguing. That's what makes someone think about you long after the conversation ends. Not because you were always there, but because when you were, it mattered. Confidence isn't loud. It's not about walking into a room and demanding attention. Real confidence is quiet. It's steady. It shows up in the way you speak, the boundaries you hold, and how you carry yourself when no one's validating you. In dating, confidence is the difference between being treated as an option and being treated as a prize. And the moment you genuinely understand that you don't need him, that your happiness, your identity, your joy doesn't depend on his approval, is the moment everything changes. Too often, people think confidence means pretending not to care, acting aloof, holding back affection as a way to stay in control. But that's just fear wearing a mask. True confidence comes from knowing your worth, even when your feelings are strong. It's when you can look at someone you care about deeply and still say, if this doesn't serve me, I'll walk. Not as a threat, but as a calm, clear knowing. It's this energy that draws people in. Because when someone senses that you're grounded in who you are, that you're not waiting for them to decide your value, it flips the dynamic. Most people are used to attention being transactional. If I like you, you'll like me back. If I pull away, you'll chase me. But when you don't play that game, when you're just showing up as your full, powerful self without needing anything in return, it's disarming. It makes them curious. It makes them want to earn your interest rather than assume it. Confidence also allows you to ask for what you want without fear. So many of us avoid expressing needs or expectations because we're scared it will push someone away. But here's the thing. If asking for clarity, consistency, or respect scares someone off, they were never invested to begin with. Confidence lets you communicate directly. You don't dance around the truth. You don't shrink yourself to seem cool. You just say, here's what I need. Here's how I show up. And I'm only interested in someone who matches that energy. This is where attraction deepens. Because it's not about being perfect. It's about being real and holding your ground. A confident person doesn't apologize for having standards. They don't over-explain their worth, and they certainly try to convince someone to stay. Instead, they hold space for the right connection to reveal itself, without forcing, chasing, or over-functioning. And here's the paradox. When you don't need someone, you become infinitely more attractive. Not because you're cold, but because your energy is clean. You're not looking to be rescued. You're not seeking validation. You're already whole. That kind of energy is rare, and it commands attention without trying. Think of it this way: if you're the sun, you don't chase anyone. You rise. You shine. And if someone wants warmth, they'll step into your light. But you never shrink yourself for someone who can't handle your glow. You don't beg to be seen. You already see yourself clearly and completely. That's what confidence really is. It's self-trust. It's emotional independence. It's the quiet belief that even if this person doesn't choose you, you'll be okay. More than okay. You'll thrive because your life isn't waiting to begin. It's already in motion. Love can join that path, but it doesn't define it. And when you bring that energy into a relationship, that's when someone stops seeing you as a nice option and starts realizing you're the one thing they can't stop thinking about. Most people associate boundaries with rejection or conflict. They think setting boundaries means pushing people away or being difficult. But that's not what boundaries are about. Boundaries are how you teach someone to treat you. They're the guidelines that protect your time, your energy, your emotions, and the right person will respect them, not resent them. The problem is, when you really like someone, it can be tempting to let things slide. Maybe he cancels last minute, or he disappears for a few days, or he pushes a little past your comfort zone. You don't want to come off as too demanding, so you justify it. You tell yourself it's not a big deal, that he's just busy, or that you don't want to scare him off. But every time you let something slide that you're not okay with, you're training him to believe that your needs don't matter, or worse, that you don't have any. Boundaries aren't there to control other people. They're there to guide your own behavior. It's not about telling someone else what they can or can't do. It's about deciding what you will do in response. If someone calls you only when it's convenient for them, your boundary might be, I don't invest emotionally in people who don't show consistency. That doesn't mean you lecture them or force them to change. It means you gradually pull back your energy and reinvest it in someone or something more aligned with your values. What people don't realize is that boundaries create safety, not just for you, but for the relationship. They signal emotional maturity. When someone knows you're willing to walk away from anything that doesn't align with your worth, they respect you more, not less. A man who is emotionally available and serious about you won't be scared off by your boundaries. He'll be relieved because your clarity tells him he doesn't have to guess where he stands. He doesn't have to read between the lines. And that kind of honesty is magnetic. On the other hand, when you don't set boundaries, you send a message that you're willing to accept the bare minimum. And once someone knows you'll tolerate poor behavior, it's very hard to shift that dynamic later. That's why boundaries aren't something you bring in later when things go bad. They're something you establish early, quietly, consistently, not as a threat, but as a reflection of your own self-respect. Holding boundaries also means being okay with disappointing people. You can be kind, compassionate and loving, and still say no. You don't owe anyone access to you just because they want it. You don't have to say yes just to avoid conflict. Every time no to something that feels off, you're saying yes to your own peace of mind. And here's the key: boundaries don't have to be dramatic. You don't need to announce them. You simply act on them. If he's inconsistent, you stop initiating. If he only texts at night, you stop replying. If he doesn't make an effort to see you, you stop making excuses for why he's too busy. Your silence, your absence, your shifted energy, those speak louder than any argument ever could. This is how obsession starts, not through control, but through self-respect. Because the moment someone realizes you have limits, and that those limits aren't negotiable, they start to take you more seriously. They see that you're not just another person trying to please them. You're a person with a life, a backbone, and a deep sense of value. And that's what makes you unforgettable. Not just to them, but to yourself. One of the most exhausting things you can do in dating is try to compete. Compete with other women, compete for attention, compete to be the one he notices, texts back, chooses. And in that mindset, you lose yourself. You start measuring your worth based on how much he responds to you, how often he compliments you, or whether you seem better than whoever else might be in his orbit. But the truth is, the moment you start competing, you've already stepped out of alignment with who you are. You don't need to compete when you stand apart. When you're rooted in your own identity, purpose, and values, no one else compares to you. Not because you're trying to be the best, but because you're not trying at all. You're just being. And that quiet, grounded sense of self is what sets you apart in a way that no amount of trying ever could. The problem is, a lot of people think attraction is about being agreeable, adaptable, or easygoing to the point of erasing themselves. You think, if I just go with the flow, if I laugh at his jokes, if I don't push back or make things complicated, he'll want to stay. But that only works for someone who's looking for comfort, not depth. If you want to be someone's obsession, you can't be interchangeable. You have to be unmistakably you. That means showing your opinions, even when they don't align. Saying no, even when it might be easier to say yes. Asking deeper questions, challenging him in a way that's thoughtful, not combative. It means showing your quirks, your edges, your realness. Because perfection isn't magnetic, authenticity is. People don't remember the woman who blended in. They remember the woman who made them feel something, even if it wasn't always easy. When you stop trying to compete, you reclaim your power. You stop worrying about whether he's texting someone else. You stop obsessing over whether you're his type. You start focusing on the only thing that matters. Are you showing up as yourself? And does this connection feel reciprocal? Are you being chosen for who you actually are, or for the version you think he wants? And if the answer isn't clear, that's your answer. Because here's the thing, if you have to outshine someone else just to be noticed, you're not being valued, you're being ranked. And someone who truly sees your value won't compare you. They won't put you in a mental lineup with other options. They'll feel a pull toward you that has nothing to do with logic and everything to do with energy. And energy doesn't lie. You don't need to post more, wear less, say the right thing, or hide your true thoughts just to win. You win by being fully yourself, even if that self isn't everyone's cup of tea, especially if it's not, because the goal isn't to appeal to everyone, it's to resonate deeply with someone. And that depth only happens when you stop filtering your light to fit into someone else's idea of enough. So instead of asking, how do I measure up? Ask, how do I stand out without losing myself? And then live your life like the answer already exists. That's when you stop competing. That's when you stop chasing attention and start attracting respect. And that's when you become unforgettable. Not because you were the loudest in the room, but because you were the most real. There's a pattern that's easy to fall into when you really like someone. You start giving more than they're giving. You show up consistently, You prioritize them, you offer your time, your energy, sometimes even your body, hoping that your love and loyalty will be enough to make them see your worth. But emotional investment should never be given blindly. Just because someone makes you feel something doesn't mean they've earned access to everything. Too often, people confuse emotional openness with emotional overgiving. You think being all in is how you prove your value, but in reality, it's how you lose your balance. You start offering intimacy before there's commitment. You start making space for someone in your life who hasn't actually claimed you in theirs. And what happens? They get the benefits of a relationship without ever having to step up and give you the relationship itself. That's where emotional standards come in. They are the invisible line between being generous and being taken for granted. When you have strong emotional standards, you don't just fall for chemistry, you look for consistency. You don't just get excited about how someone makes you feel in the moment. You watch how they treat you over time. You pay attention to whether their words match their actions. And if they don't, you don't make excuses. You adjust your level of investment. You have to protect your heart not by closing it, but by being selective with it. You can be warm, open, and loving, and still refuse to pour into someone who's not meeting you halfway. That's not cold. That's clarity. You're not here to be someone's emotional placeholder while they figure themselves out. You're here to build a connection with someone who's emotionally available, ready, and consistent. When you give too much too soon, especially emotionally, you tip the balance of power. They get to enjoy all the intimacy, validation, and support without having to commit or clarify where things are going. And the more you give, the more they get used to taking. Not because they're a bad person necessarily, but because you've shown them that they don't have to do more to keep receiving. That's why it's so important to match emotional investment. If they're texting once a week, you don't respond with daily paragraphs. If they're unsure about where they stand with you, you don't make it easy for them by constantly reassuring them. If they haven't made an effort to define the relationship, you don't start acting like you're already in one. It's not about being cold or withholding. It's about pacing. It's about reserving the most vulnerable parts of yourself for someone who's earned that level of access. Because emotional intimacy is not a gift. It's an exchange, and you deserve to receive as much as you give. This isn't about punishing someone for not committing quickly. It's about staying in alignment with your own standards. You're not trying to manipulate the situation. You're simply saying, I give my best to someone who shows me they're ready for it. And when they do, you meet them with the same energy, the same depth, the same openness. But if they don't, you don't chase, you don't settle, you don't stay stuck in the hope that maybe, eventually, they'll see what they have. Because the truth is, someone who's really about you won't risk losing you. They won't play it cool. They won't wait until you pull away to start showing up. They'll match your energy from the start. And when you live by emotional standards instead of emotional impulses, you make space for those people to show up, and you stop wasting your love on those who were never serious to begin with. So here's the truth. Being someone's obsession isn't about games, manipulation, or trying to outshine the competition. It's about alignment. It's about refusing to shrink yourself into something convenient just to be tolerated, when you are meant to be celebrated. When you raise your standards, when you protect your value, when you stop giving everything to people who give you nothing solid in return, you shift the dynamic. You go from chasing attention to attracting respect. From being someone he calls when he's bored, to being the person he can't stop thinking about when you're not around. You stop being his option the moment you start choosing yourself. Consistently, unapologetically, and without waiting for permission. Let him rise to meet you. Let him earn your energy. Let him feel the difference between someone who wants attention and someone who walks in with intention. Because the woman who knows her worth, she doesn't beg, she doesn't chase, she inspires obsession just by being her.